welcome once again to 12 Steps to Poker Heaven, our brand new series which takes you through the 12 essential steps to playing poker. I'm Carmel Thomas, and with me, he's here again today, the lovely Mr. Grubb Smith.
Hey there, Carmel.
How are you doing today?
On the outside I look calm,
Yeah.
inside I am frenzied.
You're raring to go.
That's it.
Now, in our last episode, we looked at an introduction to poker, the basics rules to Texas Hold'em, the importance of position at the poker table, and you took us through what cards we should be playing and what cards we should be chucking.
That is correct. We were in kindergarten, essentially, learning our 3 R's. It's time to move on to big school now. Things are going to get a little bit more complicated. Not so much counting as multiplication, stuff like that.
That was never my strong point in school. But let's have a look at what we're going to go through today.
That's right. We're going to begin with step 3. That is all about pre-flop strategy. We'll have a recap on the technical terms we learned earlier. We'll find out about assessing your opposition and all about adopting a good table image. Then step 4, that'll be playing after the flop, post-flop play, how to recognise good betting opportunities on the flop, turn and river, when to go all in and when to run for the hills. It's how to make money and how to save money and how to be a skillful player.
Now, Grubb, in the last episode, we went through different poker terms. Can you give us a quick recap on those?
That's right. The important ones to remember are the button. That represents who's dealing the cards, even though normally in a casino someone will be doing that for you. And that's the most powerful position in poker. Position is another technical term. A good position means you get to see everybody else act before you have to make a decision. We also talked about the small blind and the big blind. Those are compulsory bets before anyone even gets a card, just to stimulate some action and make sure there's a pot worth winning.
And what's the first thing you should do when you sit down at a poker table?
Well, if you're playing in a live game, you should have a good look around. It may be that you haven't all sat down at the same time. Somebody may have been there all night, they'll be tired, you'll look at them and you realise they're half falling asleep or they're drunk, they're not concentrating. Somebody else may be sitting there looking really focused, may have a huge stack of chips, they may be doing some complicated chip tricks with their fingers, so you can pretty much guess they know their way around a casino and they could be a dangerous opponent. Again, use your eyes. It's pretty much common sense.
And what are the different types of poker players that you come across?
Well, they essentially fall into 4 different categories. There's the tight aggressive player. This is someone who plays a very selective amount of hole cards. He won't play many hands, but when he does, he'll push his chips in fearlessly, he'll bully. He's tight, but he's aggressive when he plays. Then there's loose aggressive. That's someone who plays an awful lot of hands and just loves gambling. They love putting chips in the middle. They're a maniac is what you tend to call them at the poker table. Then you've got tight weak. This is someone who doesn't play many hands, and when he plays them, he's rather timid, tiny little raises, tiny little bets, and you can pretty easily crush him like a bug. Lastly, there's loose weak. And this is a player who plays an awful lot of hands, but again, it just tends to be a calling station. They won't re-raise you, they won't put you in any danger, and they'll be chasing impossible dreams and long shots, and they'll go broke pretty quickly.
And how important would you say image is at the table?
No, it is important. If you sit down with loose players, it's probably best that they think you're loose as well. Secretly, though, you can play tight. It's all about deception. You want them to think that you're weak when really you're strong.
Absolutely great. Well, let's have a look at an example from the British Poker Open 2006.
The hand we're about to see really demonstrates table image. Carlo Citroni is known in the circuit as a tight player. He doesn't get involved with rubbish, even though he's on the button here, which is normally a good stealing position. And he makes what could be interpreted by another player as a steal, of 4 times the big blind raise. Mark Goodwin, who's sitting there, he's already put money in the small blind. He's got very good cards, 5-handed, ace-10 offsuit. But he knows Carlo is going to have position on him, and he knows that Carlo probably has him beat at the moment. And as we can see, he's right.
OK, Grubb, can you now show us the importance of pre-flop position?
Certainly. I've laid some cards out here. We'll see that the small blind has got suited connectors, 7-8. The big blind has got a 4-9 offsuit. We come round to pocket 2s here under the gun. That's the sort of hand you might want to limp in and see a cheap flop with. So we'll say that he just calls the big blind. On the button, the dealer's picked up King-Jack. It's not a bad hand. He might make a small raise here, just to find out where he is. So let's say he just doubles it up. Over here, the 7-8, well, it's seen a raise. It's only got 8 high. It needs to hit a straight or a flush to get anywhere. So a nice conservative fold from there. Over here, we've got the big blind. He's got, at the moment, the worst hand, a 9-4 offsuit. But he does have pre-flop the best position. He's seen everybody else act first. And of course he's been watching these players not just in this hand but throughout the game, and he may know that these two players are a bit timid. They can be frightened off a hand. he also knows that he's going to have to get very lucky if it goes to a flop. So to protect his big blind, the investment he's already had to put in, he might say, I raise, I'm all in, and show incredible strength. And he knows that they can only call him with tremendous hands. So what would happen, I'm afraid, is that the twos would fold, and the king-jack, which looked so pretty a minute ago, would now, to a timid player, be ugly indeed. They'd fold as well, and the worst hand would win, simply because he got to see how strong everybody else was first. Had the dealer made a huge raise, he'd have to have folded. But because it was such a small, weak raise, he figured, I can sniff the fear, and I'm going to put my money in the middle.
Absolutely, I think it's very clear. We're now going to have a look at two examples from previous tournaments.
Here we see Smadja. He's in late position. The blinds are 4 and 8,000. He's picked up pocket sevens. And he's making a deep reach. Well, 20,000. He's bumped that up. Now, importance of position. Here we've got Kang. He's on the button.
What should he do with the ace-10?
Well, with the ace-10 and knowing that he'll have the advantage of seeing what the others do post-flop, he should probably limp in here. It's costing him 20,000. He's got plenty of chips. He does have an ace. And now we move round to the blinds. Now, in the small blind is Monsieur Detornel. Well, he's got the other pair of sevens.
All in. Xavier goes all in.
All in.
And he has announced all in. Now, this is because he knows he's going to have the worst position post-flop. He knows that post-flop, he's probably going to see overcards, and they'll probably be able to bully him. He's seen a raise and a call in front of him. He wants to make the decision happen now, because post-flop he's going to see an overcard and he'll be in a position to get bullied by these other guys. He also knows, of course, that Smadja is a particularly tight player, so he's pretty sure he can get rid of him. And it's just, can he bluff Kang off the pot? It's a sort of semi-bluff. Of course, if he knew that Smadja had the other sevens, he wouldn't be so happy. Smadja is going through the Hollywood act here. I'm really thinking about this, but with pocket sevens, he can't call the re-raise. And ace-10, Kang has got to figure, with that strong a bet, that he's up against ace-king, ace-queen, or a big pocket pair. He was going to have bad position post-flop, so he didn't let it get to a flop.
Here we are back now at the same table in Paris, where Bryce Corneau is in the big blind and Kang is under the gun.
Yes, Kang being asked to call for the big blind, 8,000.
Raise. Ben's gonna raise.
He knows he is
25,000.
not in the best position.
25,000.
So once again decides he'd like to find out right away whether he's up against anything. Bumps it up to 25,000. Gets rid of Detornel on the button. And El Sayed going nowhere with his Dolly Parton hand 9-5. Now Corneau knows that after the flop he'll have to act first. So he'll be out of position. It's just him and Kang in the hand. 17,000 to call. He's got King-Jack offsuit. Not a very strong hand in the face of a raise, even with only 4 players at the table. See his heart pumping away there. He is reaching for chips and he is considering a re-raise here. Again, he's looking at how many chips that would leave him, whether he can finish it now. King-Jack is the sort of hand you don't really want to see a flop with. As you can see, he'd only be a marginal underdog. It's essentially a coin toss situation. But he'd certainly fancy it, certainly because there's been a raise. He'd like to find out whether he can frighten him off now.
Raise to 65,000.
And there go the chips. Kang, of course, is playing not just his cards, but also the player. He'll know that Corneau has been trying to push people around. It's quite legitimate for him to put Corneau on a big ace here, say ace-9, ace-10, or a hand like he's got King-Jack, some sort of connectors. At the moment, he can suspect that his sixes are in front. It's really just how he interprets the size of that raise. It's another 40,000. He's going to have position post-flop, but with sixes, he probably doesn't want to see a flop. He knows he's got a good chance of being in front against overcards. But again, if a flop were to come down, it's almost inevitable that he'd see at least 1 or 2 cards higher than a 6, in which case he's guessing.
Go all in.
So he says all in. That's the right move in this situation. And now suddenly the boot is on the other foot, and it's going to cost Corno 100 large just to see whether he likes his king-jack.
There's no way Corno can make that call.
Not really. He's seen a raise pre-flop. He's asked the question. He's played pretty good poker. He's made an aggressive re-raise. But he's had his question answered, and he has to put Kang on ace-king, or, you know, at the very, very least, king-queen suited, or what indeed he does have, which is a pair. And if the pair were higher than jacks, if they were queens or aces or indeed kings, he'd be so dominated. But he doesn't have X-ray vision, so he did the wise thing and got out of the way, saved himself for a better spot where he can be sure he's in front.
And Grub, what other factors should we consider before acting pre-flop?
Well, the main one is how many people are around the table. If you've only got a couple of people to beat, you can probably be a bit more aggressive, because the likelihood is they won't necessarily have good cards. If you're at a table that's long-handed, it's got about 10 players on it, you can be pretty sure there are some good cards out there, so you're probably inclined to take less risks. Also, if you're in a cash game where you can just rebuy if it all goes horribly wrong, you can perhaps play a little bit more fast and loose with your decisions. But in a tournament where, you know, if you're out, you're out, and that's it, you probably have to be a bit more circumspect and err slightly more on the side of caution. Another factor would be how fast the blinds are increasing in a tournament, because sometimes the decision is taken away from you. If you don't make a move soon, you're going to be blinded out, slowly bled to death, and in that situation it's always best to go out like a hero.
Well, that's pre-flop. Join us after the break, where we'll be going through step 4, and that's post-flop strategy.